Greetings! In this presentation we are going to talk about something that is causing quite a buzz on the internet, and very understandably so, because this could actually be one of the most important things ever to happen to mankind and beyond mankind. Actually, one of the most significant things, and this is it's the Mandela Effect. So far, the Mandela Effect has been treated as a marginal thing, as marginal research. So it's something that only the so-called alternative researchers and the tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists, as people disparagingly refer to people that are interested in these things. But this is because, first of all, most of mankind is still, or mostly, sleeping. Not everybody, but mostly, or most of them, most of us are sleeping. And secondly, it's because people haven't understood, they haven't begun to understand the magnitude of the Mandela Effect and what's really represented by this. So this is a video in which I try to share some of my views. You're free to disagree, you're free to place your comments down below if you agree, or if you disagree, if you have better views and better explanations. But in this particular video, I'm going to discuss just two main issues, which is the cause and links with time. So how does the so-called Mandela Effect links with the concept of time? Now, one of the things that I'm going to do here in this video is I'm going to assume that you already know what the Mandela Effect is. So I'm not going, in this video, I'm not going to discuss examples of the Mandela Effect, and I'm not going to try and explain what the Mandela Effect really is. Some people say that it's mental, some people say that it's something that is really happening. Other people want more proof of what's really happening. So I'm not going to discuss all of these things because there is a very wide range of videos where you could have this type of information. Now, I'm just going to assume that you already know what the Mandela Effect is. There are plenty of videos that discuss these things, and it's really very astounding, the amount of data and the amount of opinion that is out there. And I'm just going to assume that you already know what that is. And I'm just showing on the screen a few of the examples of this. Now, the first thing that I would like to say, so that the 4 points that I would like to say in this first part of the presentation, and this is it. According to the research and according to noetic knowledge, which is stuff that you get from meditation and from your own intuition within the meditative state, and also from research that draws from a number of other views and other people. The first conclusion is that the Mandela Effect is real, it's physical, and it's real. It's not something that is imagined. It's not just bad memory. People having bad memories. They thought that the Ford logo was in a specific shape, but then it turns out that it's not, and so it's not anything like that. It's real. The Mandela Effect is real, and it's physical, it's happening. It's not something that's just imagined. That's the first point. The second point that I would like to make is that the Mandela Effect is a benign thing for mankind. It's not benign for some individuals, but it's benign for mankind as a whole. There are out there a lot of people that they don't really understand what's happening, and as soon as they don't understand something that is happening, they assume that it's a bad thing. So David Wilcock, researcher David Wilcock, called these people fear junkies or fear-born addicts. So it's people that are addicted to fear. So as soon as something happens that they don't really understand, they assume that it's the worst thing. It's Satan. It's the best. It's the end of the world, and it's all of that stuff. It's not. It's not. The Mandela Effect, it's something that is benign, it's happening for mankind, and it's something that is going to transform the way that we think about ourselves and the universe. Now, another very interesting thing that is happening that I could glean from research is that the Mandela Effect is not restricted to Earth. It's not something that is happening just in the United States. It's not something that is happening just in the Northern Hemisphere. It's not something that is just happening on Earth. It's actually something that is happening at least at the solar system level, if not in our entire star cluster, or maybe even in our entire galaxy. So it's not something that is just happening here in this little blue planet. It's something that goes way, way, way beyond that. The next point that I would like to say, it's actually what is causing the Mandela Effect. Well, it is a shift in consciousness. So the Mandela Effect, contrary to what a lot of people out there are concerned about, that the Mandela Effect is a bad thing and it's being caused by CERN, by people colliding subatomic particles in CERN and other facilities, or even by quantum computing. That's not the case. The Mandela Effect is caused by a shift in consciousness. It's not a shift in consciousness that is happening only on this planet. It's a shift in consciousness that is happening outside this planet as well. And it reflects cycles. It reflects certain cycles that our sun and other stars have to go. Our sun is pretty much like a clock, and the galaxy operates in a pretty much a very clockwise manner. There are certain cycles and there are certain periods that have to be observed, and at the end of each period there is a shift, a very substantial shift. The Mandela Effect is part of that. The Mandela Effect is not being caused by quantum computers or bouncing atoms. Now this is very interesting to see how the Mandela Effect could be associated with time. We first need to imagine our entire universe, our entire three-dimensional universe. So consider that your chair, your computer, as you are, or your phone where you are watching this video now, the building in which you are now, the whole Earth, the solar system, the star cluster, the galaxy, and all of the other galaxies. So this is a three-dimensional system. If you take a three-dimensional photograph of this system as it is right now, you're going to have a representation of the entire universe that is static. So if you consider this universe, this three-dimensional static representation of the universe as it is now, let's consider that as let's see that as a single point. So this single point is in fact a representation of a three-dimensional system. So you have this point that is a zero-dimensional object, that a point doesn't have any dimensions in a mathematical sense, but in this particular case we are representing this individual point. We're representing a static view of the current state of our entire three-dimensional universe as this single point. Now, if we could think about the universe as not as it is now, but as it will be in a few in a different state or in a future state, you will also have a three-dimensional static representation, or a point representing a three-dimensional static photograph of the universe. And it's going to be the same universe that we have, but it will be in a different state. So you could say that the current state is state A, and this future state is state B. Now, the line that is joining these two states from state A to state B would be a line that is outside the three-dimensional frame of reference. So it will be a line that is a line in the fourth dimension. So that's what time is. A lot of people don't consider time as the fourth dimension. They see time as just a measure of change. Some people consider time as a direction, not a dimension. But for all practical intents and purposes, we'll consider time as this fourth dimension that links different states of a three-dimensional system. Now, what is quite interesting with this concept of the and this is a timeline. So it's a time that links current state A to a future state B. So we could call this a timeline. Now, what is really interesting with this timeline is that at any time, at any point, let's say point C. So let's say the universe progresses from now until point C. And the choices that you make, because you are a sentient being, the choices that you make on point C will change the universe and will possibly lead to a different end state B1. So at any point in time, we are making these choices that can lead the universe to fork, or can lead the timeline to branch out from our current timeline, and in a way that we would have a different future state to what we started up with. Now, this is where things get really, really very interesting. So I ask you to, so bear with me. So just hang on to your hats. If you do have a specific timeline, so from A to B, you could imagine a timeline from A1 to B1, and this timeline would be really very different. So it would be represented in a way that is the second line is actually quite far away from the first line. So, for example, state, the initial state A, in this case, could be completely different from the initial state A1. So, for example, in this timeline, A1 to B1, you could be a completely different being. Maybe you are blue and you are hanging off a tree. Or maybe the sky is a different color. Or maybe you are the president of Uganda. Or something like this. So it's a timeline that is really completely different from the timeline that we currently are experiencing. Now, you could also have a situation, or you would also have different timelines, but they would be marginally different from ours. It would be really very close to what we know is our universe, but they would be nevertheless different. So, for example, in this alternative timeline, A to B2, everything could be exactly the same as in our current timeline, except for small differences. Maybe you're wearing a yellow shirt as opposed to a blue shirt, or maybe your phone is a Galaxy as opposed to an iPhone. There are really very small differences from one timeline to the next. Now, if you think of two timelines, two parallel timelines, as in this example, imagine that you could actually jump from one timeline to the next. And this is something that I'm going to discuss in another video. I'm not going to go into details of what the nature of this jump would be. Suffice to say that it's you can jump, you can shift timelines just by the power of your mind and the power of your choices and how developed your thinking is. But this is going to be covered in another video. So let's consider that external force that causes you to jump from one timeline to the next. Now this is very interesting. So you're currently in state A, going towards state B, but parallel to this four-dimensional system, you have another four-dimensional system that is going from state A2 towards state B2. Now, if around any point you jump from the fourth dimensional system AB to the fourth dimensional system A2B2, you would have something like this. You would have experienced the first system from A until the moment of the jump. Then you would have jumped and you would proceed in the second system all the way to point B2, all the way to future state B2. Now, and this is where it gets very interesting, is that once you are in the A2 B2 timeline, you would believe that the whole section or the entirety of the length of A2 B2 is your reality. So you would look back at things and all of these things around you would behave as if you had started off from point A2. And yet, all of your memories, if you are a very powerful individual, if you have a strong mind, all of your memories would still relate to the timeline, the original timeline AB. So you would have this type of cognitive dissonance sort of action where you would remember things in the AB system, and yet you would look around you and everything that you would see would be A2, B2, and would relate to A2, B2 system. This cognitive dissonance is what we call the Mandela Effect. Okay, now let's do a mental exercise. Let's continue with this mental exercise. So you have a timeline there. So let's add another timeline. So you have a different initial state, A1, a different future state, B1. Now let's add another timeline from A2 to B2, and yet another timeline, and another timeline. So you see where I'm going here. So if we do have an infinite number of timelines, we will start having a very interesting picture. This timeline, by the way, these timelines, they could actually cross each other, but just to make the picture as simple as possible, I decided to draw them in parallel. But they could actually cross, and they do, in reality, they do cross each other. So what you would have in this system there is you would have a bunch of arrows that take you from all possible current states of the universe towards all possible future states of the universe. Now, if you remember from high school geometry, if you add up an infinite number of single-dimensional objects, remember that a line is a single-dimensional object. So if you add up an infinite number of single-dimensional objects that are aligned, what do you have? Well, that's right, you have a plane. So what you will have in this case is you no longer have a time line, but you actually have a time plane. And this time plane takes you from all possible current states of our universe towards all possible future states of the universe. So now you do have a two-dimensional system. And this is quite interesting because one of the dimensions is time progressing along a specific timeline. So if you progress along that specific timeline, that's one of the dimensions of this system. The second dimension of this system is if you do change across timelines, different timelines. So this is a two-dimensional system, and this brings us to a very, very interesting conclusion, which is the Mandela Effect proves, or at least is consistent with, the proposition that time is indeed two-dimensional. This is a very interesting case. A lot of models in physics, they from the mathematical point of view, they have to represent time as a multidimensional entity, otherwise the models don't work. Well, guess what? This crazy thing that millions of people around the world are observing right now, and it's considered fringe research and and just a crazy conspiracy theory, etc. Well, this thing is not only real, but it's actually consistent with the top academic research that we see in physics today. Time does look like it is a multidimensional entity. It's not just a time arrow. Now you're talking about time planes. Now, I don't think that the Mandela Effect actually proves anything, because to prove something, you need to have a lot of evidence, and you need to have a very robust construct in order to prove that something is leading to something else. But what I would like to say is that at least the Mandela Effect is at least consistent with the proposition that time is two-dimensional, which is something that a lot of physicists are including in their models right now. Now, let's proceed with this idea. So we have a time plane, so we no longer have a time arrow or a time line. But let's start with the time plane for our universe. This is our universe as it is now. So we know how the universe works. We know that gravity attracts objects. We know that electricity works in a certain way. We know that the laws of mathematics are in a certain way. So we know that pi is 3.1511415, and etc., etc. So all of these things are known, and these things represent our universe as it is. Now consider this. Consider that there is out there another universe that is completely different from what we know. Maybe in this universe gravity repulses rather than attracts. Maybe in this universe the empty space is full of light and the stars are black. Maybe pi it's not 3.1415, but maybe pi is 1000. I don't know, it could be a completely crazy universe. It's something that is not really comparable. The constants of the cosmic constants for this universe could be completely different from what we have in our current universe. Now, if we have, let's say, another of these crazy universes, you would begin to have a system that is starting to look like something that we can identify. So we have these different universes. They are parallel to all of the other universes, and they don't touch, they don't intersect, they don't cross each other, because otherwise we would have some really crazy stuff happening. Or maybe they do, I don't know. But what you will start seeing is that you don't have a two-dimensional system anymore. What you have now is a three-dimensional system. And there are physicists working with the possibility that time is actually three-dimensional. So a three-dimensional time would be a nice symmetry in relation to the three-dimensional space that we have. And maybe this third dimension of time could be all possible universes, as we have pointed there in the drawing. Maybe these vertical dimension could mean different rates at which time passes. Maybe in the bottom universe there, the physical constants are such that your coffee would completely cool down after 2 minutes if it's in room temperature at, let's say, 20 degrees Celsius. And the top universe there would be so crazy that you could actually have your coffee cooling down in 379 years, because time passes at a different rate at this top universe there. Maybe you could have time going backwards in this top universe there. So you just leave your coffee on top of the table and it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. So the thing is, does the Mandela Effect suggest to us that we could be living in a cube structure like this? Well, the answer is unfortunately no, or not yet. In order for us to, for the Mandela Effect to be consistent with three-dimensional time, or a three-dimensional structure of which time is one aspect of, we would have to be seeing really, really, really crazy stuff. and we are not seeing. The Mandela Effect so far is changing a couple of things, but we're not seeing changes in the way that the universe behaves. We're seeing little changes like changes in company logos, changes in the way things are spelled, etc. But we're not really seeing any deal breakers, any changes suggesting that things could completely get out of hand. So the Mandela Effect so far is not consistent with this theory, with this three-dimensional time theory. But as we mentioned before, it is consistent with time being two-dimensional. And this is what we are going to leave it up at the moment. This video is starting to get a little bit lengthy. In another video that I'm going to post, I'm going to be discussing in more detail the causes of the Mandela Effect, and I hope that you guys liked it. So if so, please share, like, and subscribe as well, and we'll be coming back with more interesting stuff. So thank you very much. Bye.